Hello everyone, it's that Catholic Gamer Dude. We're going to try something a little different this time. The reasons for that being are as follows. First and foremost, I've had next to no time this week and the previous week to actually work on an actual discussion video. Last week was Thanksgiving, and the week before that was the week where I have to show up earlier for work. So the amount of time that I've had to actually work on a video has dropped dramatically in the past 2 weeks. And so rather than have yet another week where I don't post anything, I've decided that it'd probably be beneficial just to get something up. I've also thought about introducing a new format for discussion onto the channel just to have the ability to provide more content. For myself, it's time to face reality at the moment, and it appears that on YouTube, the numbers on the videos are down. They've been trending down for the past few months, and it's basically been a downward trend altogether. I'll go into the reasons why later on in the video, but for right now, just to say that the overall views have been trending downward, especially over the last month or so. Now, I'm always reevaluating the channel in terms of where I think the channel should go and in terms of how to provide content in an efficient and timely manner, and obviously is content that's of actual quality. Now, don't panic. Those types of discussion videos with the frames and everything are not going away. But it's time to take a look at the schedule that I currently have at the moment and compare that to how much time it actually takes to produce those videos. And so I put together this video, which is obviously different from what I normally do, to talk a little bit about what my original vision with the channel is, the problems that I'm encountering at the moment with getting content out, and my proposed solutions for that. The regular discussion videos will not be going away, but there will be a few changes I'm going to experiment with, and I'll be relying on you guys, who, if you're watching this video, are really the core of my audience, to work through and discuss, and let's put some constructive criticism on the channel and see where we can go from here. So the original vision of this channel was to have a Catholic view on gaming narratives, game design, and, gaming culture as a whole. The hope was to view games from a Catholic perspective and to evaluate games based on their narrative design, the theming, and not specifically the content, such as like whether there's violence or nudity or sexual content or anything like that. It was really an attempt to look at games from a more holistic perspective and not necessarily to judge them based, well, it doesn't conform to Catholic doctrine here and blah, blah, blah. No, it's more about actually looking at both the positives and negatives from a distinctly Catholic perspective. I've used Stephen Gradanis and Decent Films and the way he reviews movies as kind of a guide to looking at games from the perspective of a critic, but at the same time doing it from a Catholic perspective, while also trying to have like a more of a feather touch to it, not coming down too hard on it, but talking about the good sides and the bad sides of particular games and gaming culture as a whole. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it overall, but it does come with some limitations. The biggest trick is finding the right balance for these videos. It's been difficult to find that balance between not injecting faith, but finding natural transitions to talk about the faith in regards to the videos themselves. I think a perfect example of where I was trying too hard was the Wolfenstein review. In that review, I cited Catholic teaching on just war theory and basically laid it out as it is in the Catechism. And that really felt like a blunt club rather than talking about it in a more organic fashion. I'm glad that I did it because it gave me an opportunity to see how it fit into a review video, but it really taught me that trying to bluntly introduce Catholic teaching was not really beneficial to either the video format or the discussion as a whole. The attempt with the format is not just to find that right balance, but also to inject some humor into it through the frames and illustrations. I really like doing those illustrations. And it's a good way to kind of, in my own life, because I'm a software developer, just do something that's a little more on the creative side. There are, however, some drawbacks in terms of the production of the videos themselves. For example, the videos take a long time. As you can tell, I moved over to the 2-week schedule, and that still requires me to get these videos sort of under the deadline limit really quickly. Typically, a video will take 2 weeks to produce, and I only have about maybe 2 hours a day at the most, and that's not true of every day. I have other things that I need to do. During that time frame, I would normally be working on the video. So we're talking about maybe a couple of days to a week to put the script together, and then to annotate it with the various frames that I'm going to draw, and then another week or so to actually get all the frames out. You're talking about maybe 100 to 110 frames per video. And like I said, I actually enjoy doing them, and I'm very glad, although by the time I get to like frame 100 or so, I'm like, oh, let's just get this out the door. But it does take a bit of time, and it takes a while to get all that stuff compiled together and do the voice recording and stuff like that. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. And it's time that I'm simply losing over the course of this past year. And I'll talk about those reasons in a minute. Another issue with it is that the format and the philosophy behind it is a bit constricting at times. The format and the philosophy itself is a bit constricting. The challenges with putting those videos together is actually dealing with a couple of points that can be developed in that particular time frame without exhausting me and meeting the 2-week deadline, yada yada yada. So there's the problem. First off is that the length is not enough time to develop some ideas. I think we've just seen that with a couple of different concepts in the videos, and what ends up happening is that I get kind of stuck on the same points and trying to allude to these different concepts by repeating the same things in different ways. And that starts to cause a problem, because if the audience doesn't pick up on that, then it just looks like I'm just repeating myself. The obvious solution to that would be to extend the length, but that makes it even more time consuming to get the video out, and there reaches a certain point where I start to lose focus. I think the 7-minute length or so is about as far as I can go over a particular 2-week period and talk about a very specific topic. That's not to say that I wouldn't love to extend the length of the videos, it's just I'm looking at the practical reality of getting this stuff out in a timely fashion. Which brings me to my second issue, is that the current format works against a lot of YouTube metrics. There's a reason why gaming channels are so popular on YouTube, and it's because the length of the videos themselves goes over that magical 10-minute mark, where you can start adding either multiple advertisements, or YouTube picks up on them, the longer videos rather than the shorter ones. It's been a complaint that a lot of people have had for a long time, is because quality videos with illustrations, not mine, but people who actually know how to draw, are finding themselves struggling to really make cash on YouTube, because YouTube's metrics works against shorter videos. And it's not just the length of the videos themselves, but the most important metric is minutes watched. Minutes watched was introduced by YouTube some years back over views, because spamming sites would just pop up the videos for certain videos, and the views would just climb astronomically, but no one was actually watching the video. So YouTube's new metric, not new metric, it's been around for like years, that minutes watched is the most important metric. That's how people get paid. Those are the advertisements. And that's not necessarily our goal here, although obviously I would like to make some cash. That's why I run the advertisements on the videos. But the issue is that minutes watched is one of the metrics that YouTube uses to promote certain videos. And finally, at least in my case, even with the 2 weeks, depending upon how those 2 weeks go, that may still not be enough to put together a quality discussion video with all the frames and everything like that. I still find myself grinding on Saturday and Sunday trying to get this stuff out the door. And that comes down to basically what I've learned this past year, is that this has been a really tough year in order to have a predictable schedule. For those who follow the saga on my vlogs, my son, my 2 years old at the time son, had spinal surgery done, and that was really nerve-wracking and exhausting. It's been a real trial. It was a real trial. Now that it's over, I mean, he's 3 years old now. You would never know that he actually had any surgery done. He runs around. He's a normal 3-year-old kid, and it's been great. So we're very thankful for that. But at the same time, I didn't realize until after the saga was over that how much of that was actually taking a lot of my creative energy just out of anxiety and worrying about him. The last thing you want to hear as a parent is spinal surgery and child in the same sentence. The second thing is, as for those who followed my vlogs too, is that this has been a really tough work year. I've talked a lot to the veterans at where I work, and they've all said the same thing, that this was one of the toughest years that they've had, just because there was so much to do and the scheduling didn't work out, and so a lot of projects ended up colliding together. It was really, really tough. And on a typical work day, at least until this year, I would go in, I would do my thing, and then come home and have the creative energy to do it, or wake up the following day and have the creative energy to do that. This year has been so tough that as soon as I've gotten home, I haven't had any creative energy. So it's been a real struggle just to motivate myself to get these discussion videos out. And again, I really like doing them, but you still need to have a certain amount of creative and mental energy in order to do it. And since I'm a software developer, mental energy is what goes into my work. And the cold, hard reality of this is that this is probably not going to change for the foreseeable future. Without going into too much detail, I will be on call at certain times throughout the following year. This is fairly normal, and most of the time it doesn't really matter. But it is going to shake up my personal schedule even more at times. And obviously, we've talked on the channel before, family comes first. And so whenever the family stuff kind of interferes with the timing for this channel, the channel tends to get neglected because of other stuff that's going on in the house and at home. And I know you guys have been really supportive, and I really appreciate that. The variability of the schedule in terms of posting videos due to family commitments, you guys have been so supportive, and I really do appreciate that, and you keep coming back. And that's going to be another factor, because my daughter, who is currently in utero, is going to be here with us the first week of January or so. So that's most likely nothing is going to change on that front, and in fact, I'll be even more busy. Now, obviously, we're really happy about that, but in the context of this channel, it tends to be somewhat of a negative, because what little time that I have will be pulled off for that as well. This channel has always been a hobby and a passion project, and hobbies and passion projects are the first to go when the family needs you. And again, we're all very excited, and this is a great thing. It's just that for the context of this channel, we need to figure out something to allow me to post meaningful content that doesn't require a huge amount of time investment. I know the quality videos require time. That's just a reality of it. But if there's a way that we can get content on the channel that is good enough, quote unquote, that actually continues the conversations in some way and remove some of the time demands on the channel, then that way it benefits everybody. So here's my basic proposal for new content on this channel. What I'm looking at is introducing longer discussion videos. Now, as we just discussed, these longer discussion videos won't actually have the frames. They'll have maybe a couple of frames to transition over sections of the discussion, or they'll have something like video going on in the background of like a game I'll be playing or something like that. Basically, these discussions will kind of develop ideas a little more in depth. These will be posted on a weekly basis. So the idea is that I'll have something on the channel at least every week, if not more so, depending upon how productive I'm that particular week or two. Now, these will be non-Patreon videos. The idea behind it is that the Patreon stuff was set up while I still had the 2-week discussion video format. I will have to discuss with the patrons themselves what they actually think about this new schedule and what they'd be willing to support. But the idea is that if I'm generating stuff every week, I may switch over to a monthly donation rather than a specific contribution for every video. And until we get those details ironed out, I won't be posting any Patreon posts that actually charge. The Patreon thing has always been a glorified tip jar. The idea is that those who really like my content and are willing to support it can actually go on the Patreon and do that. And I've done that on a per video basis while it was once every 2 weeks, but I'm just finding that that's just not enough content to keep the channel alive. The purpose of these longer discussion videos would be to incorporate the discussion that goes on after the initial discussion channels. There's a lot of good discussion on certain subjects, and it kills me when I can't respond to it in the YouTube comments or anything like that. I really would like a way to incorporate that into the overall discussion and talk about things and themes that develop as a result of some of those discussions. I really think that would add a lot of value to the channel and kind of keep the conversation going. It would also allow me to develop concepts that require more discussion, such as kind of like this, where we're talking through some of the complications with the shorter video formats and adding the larger discussions and what they be for, but to talk about concepts that are introduced in those illustrated discussion videos. Hopefully this will be a more engaging format for the community. It'll feel like that the people who are watching will be able to participate in the conversations more directly, and it'll allow me to actually take some of your feedback and incorporate it into a discussion. Right now, the problem is with the 2-week time frame is that people post comments and demonstrate how much smarter they are, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I actually do think that a lot of the people who write and comment on my videos actually have a lot of great insights, and I would really like to incorporate some of that stuff. But the current format really limits me in terms of being able to respond to that and take those ideas and develop them further. Now, the illustration videos and everything like that will not go away. In fact, I've been kind of toying with the idea of using them as kind of a short primer to introduce in a humorous way, but also talk about in a very specific way certain topics that I'd like to talk about on the channel itself. So those short videos will be the kind of the discussion primer, and then we'll have some discussions over the course of the next few weeks or a month or something like that. The intent is not to beat a subject to death, but to really just talk through some of the different implications and talk about ideas in a broader context. As I stated before, one of the problems with the current format is that there are themes and topics that actually deserve a much broader discussion, and I'm just not able to do that in the context of those discussion videos. The other thing I'd like to do is kind of branch out a little bit, and what I mean by that is in the context of maybe more culture or faith videos. I've had a couple of rules in place for these discussion videos over this past year, and while they've been helpful in keeping me focused, I think it's time to kind of broaden the scope a little bit. The first rule is that games should be the main focus of the channel, and that the philosophical, religious views kind of come in with a feather touch. And that's been fine for some of the discussions, but what I've tended to realize is that there's a lot more to say about it from a Catholic standpoint, but I can't really do that without introducing Catholic concepts that anyone outside of the faith may be unfamiliar with. And this channel is ultimately designed to be viewed by people who are outside of the faith and start to generate some ideas. And so getting too deep into the Catholic wellspring may be a limitation to that. And that's something that I've really struggled with in terms of deciding where that balance is. So thinking about it in terms of where can we start inserting concepts about the Catholic faith more, and where can we develop these ideas in regards to gaming and gaming culture, that is going to be the challenge, and I'm hoping that with the new longer discussion videos that will be able to incorporate a lot of that concepts and other things like that. The other thing too is that I don't know if you guys noticed, but the United States just had an election. Now, before you all click off, this is not going to be a political channel. I made it a vow a long time ago not to get into the politics, not even so much for the content of the channel, but just for my own sanity. To give you a little background on myself, I used to be a real political junkie. I would follow this stuff all the time, hyper-partisan and other things like that. I really had to detach myself from politics in general. And it wasn't even like ideological commitment. It was just the horse race mentality. You know, who's ahead, who's behind, who's actually going to take the House or Senate, blah, 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 blah. This stuff was not very healthy for me. So when I put this channel together, I made a firm commitment not to introduce politics as much as I could. What I am realizing, though, and the things that have come through my head this past year, is that there's a lot of connection to the larger culture that I feel, while we've not tried to introduce it up until this point, I feel like these larger discussion videos could incorporate them in a way that isn't negative. And it's not going to be like a politics channel or anything like that, but talking about the wider culture and how that impacts gaming, and how the gaming culture can, I feel, impact the wider culture as a whole, is something that our channel would be interested in, is something that we could focus on in a couple of discussions or talk about. So it's something to think about going down the road. So to put it in simpler terms, the goal of this is to start talking about how we can expand the format and make it a little more loose so that we can cover a bit more things and actually have quality content on the channel that still fulfills its mission, but isn't as restrictive as what's currently on the channel with just the smaller discussion videos. I still love those things. I think they'd be great for discussion primers to introduce certain topics that we would then talk about, but the fact that they are too short to actually develop the concepts in more depth that they deserve, plus the fact that it takes so long to put together these videos, they're going to have to be scaled back a little bit, and we're going to have to start thinking about more constructive ways, not constructive, but more flexible ways of getting content on the channel. So at the end of the day, this video was basically designed to get you guys into my head a little bit in terms of where I'm thinking this channel is going, and to give you an opportunity to provide some feedback as well. Changes are going to come, and they're going to happen if this channel is going to adapt to the culture at large. You know, it's one of those things is that a YouTube channel at the end of the day has to balance between, you know, what content and what quality can you provide, and, you know, where is the audience? And I've been thinking a lot over this past year, is what Pope Francis said, is that you have to reach people where they are. And that's kind of where this channel and what I hope to do with this channel is to actually reach the gaming community where it is at the moment and talk about a lot of these cultural concepts in a constructive fashion. But I can't do that if the content that needs to be produced doesn't align with my current schedule. And the simple reality is that my schedule needs to be more flexible, and thus the channel is going to need to be more flexible in order to produce quality content that isn't going to just completely beat me down. And as always, this channel is always in an experimental flux. This is a very new channel. It's only been around for a year or two, I think. I'd have to go back and take a look. It's been a while. But the idea is that we're going to have to continue to experiment, talk to things, see where we can add the most value, and ultimately use the channel to actually hit where we feel we're doing the most good. The channel and the video content are only worth it if it actually does add to the quality of the discussion, and does so in a way and evangelizes the culture in a way that doesn't feel like browbeating. And I feel like that I like the current light touch that we have so far, but I feel like that some of the topics that come up deserve a better discussion than the current format can actually do. And I'm just repeating myself at this point just to kind of summarize things. But if you're still listening to me, it's because you actively support the channel and are genuinely interested in the content. And I really do thank you for that. It's been, I know it's a cliche to say it, but it's been very humbling to see how many people are very interested in this content and how much they're willing to help, and how understanding they've been over the past year because of everything that's been going on at the house. And now that we're at a point where we need to reevaluate, I really do want to thank you guys again and really want to draw you into that discussion. And so that's kind of the point of this video. It's to take your suggestions, to take your feedback, and see what we could do to improve the content on this channel and actually get some content on the channel other than once every 2 weeks. I think that's really the limiting factor in terms of audience retention. If we can get quality discussion videos out on the channel on at least a weekly basis, I think that would benefit the channel, and I feel that would benefit the discussions ultimately, more than having just once every 2 weeks and then hopefully, you know, in a couple of YouTube comments, just kind of have a discussion peter out. So ultimately, I hope that this channel grows and that it adds to the cultural discussion in a positive way. And in order to do that, I feel like certain changes need to happen. But in any event, thank you very much, guys, for listening to me to talk about this for a while. I know it's been a lot of information to take in, but I also felt like that it would be beneficial to the channel, to you guys, and to myself, so that we're all on the same page and to know what's actually coming up. If you have any suggestions or anything you'd like to see, please feel free to leave suggestions and comments on this video. I always read everything, even if I can't respond to it. So that would be a great way to provide some feedback, and every little bit of discussion helps. YouTube does pay attention to likes, shares, and how much interactivity in the community there is on a particular channel. So every little bit helps. And I know you guys have helped a lot, and I continue to appreciate your support. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.